He was the first pop idol I ever remember trying to imagine naked. And I was only like 8.
How can I be sure in a world that's constantly changing?
David Cassidy was definitely my first love. Most definitely.
Where I stand with you.
He did pack them in. Girls were passing out all the time, and he was really a heartthrob.
Cherish is the word I use to describe.
You just ate, slept, dreamt David Cassidy.
I write the songs that make those young girls cry.
Every day people come up to me and tell me that I made a difference in their life. It's the greatest gift that anyone can ever have.
I'm sleeping and right in the middle of
Las Vegas, showbiz capital of America. A former teen idol steps back into the spotlight.
Fantastic performer. I mean, obviously
drawing in the crowd.
It's wonderful, wonderful. This is the best in my life.
What a comeback. It's great to see him back.
I think I love you. I am a clown.
Here's a little background for you folks at home on the Cassidy family. Jack Cassidy, Broadway star, marries Evelyn Ward, Broadway star. They have David Cassidy. Jack and Evelyn divorce sometime in the mid-50s. Jack meets Shirley Jones doing a European tour of Oklahoma. Sparks fly. They get married and have Sean. David feels very much outside the family, and my dad was kind of a distant figure to him.
I am a clown.
I remember being a kid so insecure. I'm thinking about it getting choked up about it, because here you're a child and you don't know. The universe revolves around you and your parents. My parents were always gone. They were always not around me. They were actors. When I was growing up in the 60s as a teenager, I started to learn to play guitar beyond playing rhythm in bands and stuff, and I started to listen to much more alternative stuff. I saw Hendrix 5 times. I was a guy who was very much a part of my generation. I had already smoked pot, and before I became a serious actor, I was sneaking out at night, and I cut school all the time, and I got kicked out of high schools. I wasn't a bad boy, I was just wild.
There was a turmoil going on, obviously, in the country, because there was, Vietnam, and there was terrific unrest on the campuses. And the Partridge Family was totally outside of that, removed from that. It was almost defined escape entertainment. When I came down here, I thought it'd be interesting to do a situation comedy that used music. And then one night I saw a family group called the Castles, and essentially the show came out of that.
The teenage David Cassidy soon followed his folks into the acting business.
I don't want to go to school.
You told me you don't want to go to school. You told me until my head's ready to spin. Now your pa says you're going, and that's final.
He ain't my pa.
After behaving badly in Bonanza and Ironside, in 1970, Cassidy was cast as a clean-cut, all-American boy.
The Partridge Family.
Come on now and meet everybody.
David's own stepmother, Shirley Jones, was hired as his screen mum, with David playing heartthrob Keith. The series also featured teen model Susan Day and 11-year-old Danny Bonaducci. Dave Madden played the band's long-suffering manager.
5 of us and Mom working all day. We knew we could help her if our music would pay.
Okay. Begin with Vito at the top of the scene. And action.
The Partridge Family was a series about a widow whose husband obviously died of exhaustion and a natural lack of rhythm. leaving behind all these kids that looked nothing like their mother or each other. Did you ever notice that?
It's one of those nights when you turn out the lights and you sit in the dark and say to yourself, I miss her. It's one of those moods when your body broods and you conjure up her picture and you kiss her. It's one of those things for the pain it brings. You say to yourself, hey, couldn't I live without it?
There was somebody for everybody.
Well, I think so. On the other hand, I doubt it.
But the little redhead
Except for
one.
Fat Danny.
No, it was. Danny's very popular now.
Dave Madden, the guy who played Reuben Kincaid, told me very early on how they picked us.
This is a showdown.
He came up to me, and I was all 10 years old, and he said, well, they'd hired Shirley Jones and David Cassidy and Susan Day. They really needed a couple of ugly people, so they got us.
I track you down for sure, like 1,000 times before.
We were very lucky in the casting. When Shirley was cast, it was almost a coincidence that David was cast as her son. Because he's not really her son, he's a stepson.
I hear it was a coincidence. To hear Shirley tell it, she didn't even know that he had been hired when they asked her to do this. Somebody must have known something.
He was sort of like a pretty boy, and he was a boy, and he seemed accessible. And the whole Partridge Family thing made you feel like, yeah, he could be your brother, or, you know, he could be the boyfriend. He was the one that you would love to be the guy who knocked on the door and said, would you like to come out to the pictures?
Mom, do you think I'll get over the nervousness? I mean, when I get out in front of the cameras, do you think I'll forget about it?
I doubt it.
For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny.
Starring Cassidy, the series realistically promoted the Partridges as a single-parent family turned hit pop act. Their debut single sold 5 million.
Right in the middle of a good dream, like all at once I wake up from something that keeps knocking at my brain. Before I go insane, I hold my pillow to my head and spring up in my bed, screaming out the words I dread. I think I love you.
This morning, I woke up with this feeling I didn't know how to deal with.
So I just decided to myself, I'd hide it to myself and never talk about it, and did not go and shout it when you walked into the room.
I think I love you. And that's it. Shirley.
I think I love you.
I think I love you, so what am I so afraid of?
But if you watch the musical numbers, I'm barely in them. I didn't learn the words. It took me, I think, about 5 episodes of the show when David Cassidy finally came up to me and said, hey man, you don't strum a bass, you pluck it.
She's my girl, not the things she'll like to do, like walking in the rain.
David sang. Shirley went doo-ah, doo-ah in the background so she could make money on the albums. I wanted to hum. They wouldn't let me. I'd like to have had some of that money too, but they wouldn't let me do that.
I like to say that the Partridge Family was the original Milli Vanilli, but at least the Milli Vanilli tried.
We got a sound that'll knock your eyeballs out.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
I think that they had some damn good pop songs. Some were really bad, but a lot of them had the basic things you need in pop. A catchy chorus, simple romantic lyrics.
They say that breaking up is hard to do.
Now I know that it's true.
Don't say that this is the end.
Instead of breaking up, I wish that we were making up again.
I remember Jeff Beck came up to me and he went, shit, man, I had no idea you could play. And I thought, gee, that's kind of interesting. The perception is that I can't really play. Well, what do you think I've been doing? I guess from television, the rest of the kids in the show and the people in the show couldn't really play. The people were surprised that I could actually play.
Mom, I wish you wouldn't stuff your ears every time we play. It's very discouraging.
Can I help it if I'm a music lover?
The first time that I knew we're famous, we're at a parade in Cleveland, Ohio. Oh, it was insane. There's a parade where they had the biggest crowd ever was 50,000 people. Partridge Family was so huge, they brought in security for 100,000 people. 500,000 people showed up. And we were on a fire engine, which got flipped over. Susan Day's clothes were ripped off like that. David Cassidy had chunks of his hair either cut off or just ripped out. And I thought, hey, man, we're famous.
I said, oh, rock me, baby, hold me oh so tight.
The level of fame that David had was more than incredible. At the beginning of it and as it started to roll, I mean, we'd kind of look at each other and go, my God, this is phenomenal.
What would you do, Teresa, if you had the chance to meet David Cassidy in the flesh?
I don't think I'll be able to say anything. I think I'll be too nervous. You just don't expect to meet him personally. If you did, you know.
Hi there.
Hi there.
I didn't want to be famous. For me, the ambition was really about doing something that made me tick, that made me the juices flow. And that was acting, that was writing, that was singing, that was performing.
You don't know how many times I wish that I had told you. You don't know how many times I wish that I could hold you. You don't know how many times I wish that I could mold you into someone who could cherish me as much as I cherish you.
Plain, ordinary, wishful dreaming.
First year of his success, I gave up my job as an apprentice film editor to help market David in concert, because this was starting to escalate at such a pace that I knew he was going to need some anchor somewhere where, through all the chaos and all the machinery of yes people that come along with the trappings of fame and fortune.
Launched as a solo star, in 1972, Cassidy fever spread to Britain.
I remember when he came to London, and you know that he took that barge on the Thames or something like that. And I badgered my parents to bring me down, but there was no way. A girl from Stoke was not going to be coming to London to see David Cassidy in concert and scream. I think that was, my mum and dad drew the line at that.
It was all entertainment, and it wasn't who I was. It was just, you know, me putting on the jumpsuit and going out and doing the thing. And, you know, it didn't really reflect anything except perhaps my sense of humor about myself and the times.
I remember the stage outfits when he was out on the road, where he was working some polyester full-body suits, which were very different from what he wore on the TV, which was kind of regular guy gear.
Do you know who else wore polyester bodysuits?
Apart from me?
Elvis.
David definitely had a difficult time with his image as Keith Partridge, as being everybody's older brother and as being a goody two-shoes.
The whole neighborhood is so proud of you. Going off to Hollywood to be a big movie star.
I may not even get the part.
With that face, how could they refuse?
People were always shocked when they would see, like, David Bowie and Iggy Pop and David Cassidy and Mickey Dolenz. I mean, you know, we respected David. David could sell out, you know, Dodger Stadium a couple times, and that gives you a lot of respect.
And one more thing before I let you go. And I woke up in love this morning. I woke up in love this morning. Went to sleep with you on my mind.
David was a normal 19, 20-year-old guy that was like all of us. Our hormones are in our tennis shoes, and the number one thing that you think about all the time is women.
It's kind of why people become musicians, don't they say? That's why they pick up a guitar, is to meet girls, you know. So here he was in a wonderful situation to do that. And even though he couldn't even leave the hotel to look for them, he had people to bring them up there to him. All nicely chaperoned, of course, you know, but by me. with my camera.
He just sends you mad. He's so good looking, he's not true, you know. Everybody wants to get near him.
Could it be forever? Or is my mind just rambling on? I touched you once, I kissed you once, now I feel like you're mine.
Everybody only saw his nice, squeaky clean 16 magazine cover, but Dave was a party animal. Yeah.
Hey, it was a wild and free and wonderful environment, and I was like every other red-blooded American boy.
Could it be forever? Or am I just a waste of time?
I had as much of an appetite for all of it as everybody else did.
Girls were passing out all the time, and he was really a heartthrob.
And I can't remember when the feelings have been stronger. And all I know is I can't let go on a beautiful.
What's your ambition as far as he's concerned?
Oh, like me and 1,000 of other girls in the world, most probably to become Mrs. David Cassidy.
And we all kind of sat around going, gee, I wish we kind of had that. Girls, you know, passing out. But they passed out at our concerts for all different reasons, though.
Keith, I've got something to tell you.
What?
You know that rumor about me and the older woman? Every word of it's true.
But you're only 10.
I actually lost my virginity on the set of The Partridge Family to a David Cassidy fan. I was 13. She must have been 22, 25. And she was looking all over David, and I guess he had his fill of girls in the dressing room, of which there were who knows how many. And I just went up to her all 13 years old, and I said, "Hi, I'm Danny." And apparently, any partridge in a storm was her motto, and I like to say I gave that woman the best 30 seconds of her life.
They used to ask me about, how do you feel about having kids as fans? Or how do you feel about this teenage thing and teeny boppers? And I remember saying this all the time and thinking, well, it's great.
I was a huge David Cassidy fan. It's true to say probably that he was the first man that I probably fell in love with.
He was a fabulous mover, and his cute little bum on action in stage was something I will not forget. It was gorgeous.
I like the way he dresses, really. How about the way he moves around on stage?
In the eyes of the world, I'm a loser just wasting my time. Can't make a dime. In the eyes of the world, being born was my first big mistake.
To be at the focal point of all of that energy of people screaming, I love you. I wish every human could feel it.
I remember waking up in New Zealand. I mean, it was very early in the morning, and outside the window, you hear this, you know, "We love you, David. We always will. We love you." You know, oh my God.
When one person looks at you and says, I love you, and they look at you and they say, no, 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 I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. When 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs, I love you. It's so overwhelming, man. It's like, whoa. You know, it's the ultimate e-ticket.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Could I just ask you a few questions?
Just on that for us, please, someone. Oh, it is, yeah.
A millionaire pop idol at 22, David was the world's most eligible bachelor. He drove his female fans wild and began to live in fear of being torn apart.
Glad to be here. I
What do you think about weather?
It's rather brisk, yeah? A bit chilly.
How to get him to and from the gig was of utmost concern. David would finish a gig, you'd take him off stage, he'd be full of sweat. You'd throw a blanket around him, either throw him in the bottom, the floor of a limousine or in a laundry truck or something, and get him to the hotel.
How are you reacting to all this, all the fans and so on?
Well, I mean, there are not too many here, huh? It's good.
You're pleased they aren't here?
Well, yeah, only because, I mean, the airport situations, they can become, you know, not too safe, you know, and it's during a school day, and I'm glad that, you know, it wasn't announced, and it was very quiet because nobody cut school, and, you know, it's better that way, you know.
We toured for years. I don't know how many shows a year we would do, but approximately 100 shows a year in the States, going out on the weekends.
It was just mass hysteria. I couldn't walk down the street. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't stay in hotels. I had to stay on a boat in the Thames, for instance, in London. I mean, in New York, I couldn't stay in any hotel. They turned over at Madison Square Garden. They turned over, destroyed 5 limousines when I played there. They stopped traffic in New York.
David's schedule, looking back on it now, was almost inhuman. I mean, I think the labor board would probably come down on us. I mean, fortunately, he was over 18 because we would definitely be breaking child labor laws.
I'd get up at 6 in the morning, be there all day on the set of The Partridge Family, and then I'd go and record at night until midnight, get home at 1 o'clock, get up at 6 o'clock, and on the weekends, I would go out and do concerts all over the place. So I never slept. I was always exhausted. It always looked like I was hungover, which I wasn't, because I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't take no drugs, no alcohol, no nothing. I couldn't possibly maintain if I was doing that, working that much. I never saw my home. I saw it between 1 in the morning and 6 in the morning. That was it.
Cassidy had not only a teen female audience, he had a huge gay audience as well. And I think that was partly the pretty boy looks and the sort of almost androgynous looks as well. And then you'd get 1 or 2 straight men into him because, well, you know, the music's very good. You know, he's a great performer. But I think it was mainly about sex, really.
How can I be sure?
And the voice. It was very breathy. How can I be sure?
How can I be sure?
It's all sort of very breathy, not so much vibrato, but breathy. And that was his distinctive sound, more than anything else.
Whenever I'm away from you, I wanna die, 'cause you know I wanna stay with you.
And I actually remember listening to the countdown on the top 20 on Radio 1, and How Can I Be Sure is #1. I remember bursting into tears like, you've made it, David, you've made it.
Use me, touch me, but don't take me down. Whenever I'm away from you, I wanna die, 'cause you know I wanna stay with you. I'm just hanging around with my head up, upside down, it's a pity. I can't seem to find someone who's as pretty and lovely as you.
I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't aware that people were attracted to me, men, women, but they're attracted to lots of people. Yeah, I'm sure that there is a sexuality, but when you're dealing with, you know, now, I'm dealing with adults. You know, the people that were fascinated and were fantasizing, and most of it is very innocent.
I can feel your heartbeat, and you didn't even say a word. I can feel your heartbeat, but you didn't even say a word. Oh, I know, pretty woman, that you love to be heard.
He had something about him, for lack of a better word. He was very cocky. When you're
Do you remember how his hair used to walk into a room with that
and it used to
confident
flip.
hair?
We used to love that confident hair.
And I was desperate to have straight hair so I'd be able to have that style. In fact, I don't know, maybe now. Maybe it's somewhere here is the David Cassidy hairstyle. That's a bit frightening, isn't it?
You can feel my heartbeat too. I can tell you're feeling me. You can feel my heartbeat too. I can see you feeling me.
Cassidy was big business. You could stick David's face on absolutely anything and it would sell in truckloads.
Let it shine in the light of our love.
Jackie was the little girl's Bible. If there was a picture of David Cassidy on the front, or there was a floppy disk of maybe his latest single or something that he'd recorded specially for the magazine, of course you'd buy it. And probably, you know, the day after publication, there'd be none on the shelves.
I had lunch boxes. I had a thermos.
Worth so much money.
I had a toothbrush.
I'm aware of the impact that I had on the world and on the planet. I have to be. I'd be completely and totally unconscious if I didn't. A, I was living it then, and B, I'm David Cassidy today. I walk down the street or I go anywhere, I play here, and people are constantly telling me what an impact I had on their lives.
In these 3 boxes here, there's a petition from your fans in Scotland. It's been signed by 30,000 people. Well, we thought perhaps you'd like to say a message now to Sheena Cameron, who organised the petition, and of course to the 30,000 people who signed it.
I'd love to. Is it Sheena?
Yes.
Sheena, the next time I come to the United Kingdom, I hope I can sing for everybody in Scotland.
Yeah, any idea when you're coming next?
I'm not sure, you know, perhaps next year, you know, in '74.
Yeah. Well, I'll be looking forward to that in Scotland.
What have I got?
Despite the clean-cut Keith Partridge image, in private, David Cassidy lived the rock and roll lifestyle alongside his pal Alice Cooper.
Or something I might be.
People like Alice, probably he and I were the biggest solo performing acts. The fact that our exteriors were so different, the physicality of us perhaps was so different. But it's business.
Have you got the time to find out who I really am?
Alice is a great entertainer. He's a tremendous guy. And he's way too good of a golfer.
I hit more fairways with it. I hit it longer. You get it in your hands and you just know you're going to smack that ball. In rock and roll terms, it's a killer club.
Golf now has become a very acceptable rock and roll thing to do. And we were playing golf when we had to be closet golfers because, you know, we wouldn't want, you know, parents or, you know, their parents play golf. You can't be playing golf.
He said something to me backstage like, so I said, so what are you going to do afterwards? And he said, well, we're going so-and-so, but I got a golf game tomorrow morning. And I went, excuse me?
Now this is fun.
We were kind of rebels at the time. We'd get in disguise and go out and play golf. Mickey Dolenz played golf, too. Iggy Pop played golf. But we couldn't talk about it. It was like, you know, I mean, you could talk about anything, sexually, drug-wise, anything like that you could talk about, but never mention golf. It was like a suicidal thing to mention golf at that time.
Rolling Stone wanted to write an article about him. I think probably, you know, he wanted to sort of influence the article kind of away from the Partridge Family and more onto what he was trying to do as a solo performer.
The cover of the Rolling Stone, where he was, I assume, virtually naked. I mean, you can almost see his pubic hair. If he had any, he was probably just getting it.
There were references to sex and drugs, and that really did affect his image.
It was just suicide. Nothing. Well, actually, it was murder because he was killing Keith. Really? Ooh, how profound. But that's exactly what that was. He was doing what he could to kill Keith, and to everyone's surprise.
Nothing in the world could bother me, 'cause I was living in a world of ecstasy. But now you're gone, I'm just a daydreamer.
The impact was with the television show and the sponsors, and they were freaking out.
It was the fastest and largest selling edition ever until the death of John Lennon.
I was taking photos of the Osmond brothers, and I showed it to Donnie and his brothers, and they all kind of crowded around looking, going, oh my God, you know, look at that. I mean, these guys were Mormons and pretty squeaky clean, you know, and they were shocked.
I find myself alone with only memories of you. I was so in love I couldn't see, 'cause I was living in a world of make-believe.
It was the most controversial because the article itself made reference at one point to there being pot, and the way it was written was it could have been me, which it wasn't. And I resented the fact that they tried to in any way tarnish or create an illusion that I was the antithesis of this squeaky clean white guy.
I'm just a daydreamer. I'm walking in the rain, chasing after rainbows I may never find again.
People that actually read it and didn't like David Cassidy still liked Keith. He couldn't kill the guy.
So it was kind of a no-win situation for him, a lose-lose situation. He didn't gain what he wanted to gain from the people he wanted acceptance from, And the other people that he was tired of working for and with just came down on him pretty heavy, and we had to do a lot of spin control and dancing.
There was a big apology in Tiger Beat with him hanging his head in photographs and explaining why he said it. It was scandalous to me when I was young. I felt very betrayed.
By early 1974, the level of teenage hysteria at Cassidy's concerts was causing concern. Venues and hotels banned him. Exhausted, David had already decided to retire after one last tour.
And there'd be screaming, screams and screams, and girls jumping up and down, crying and, screaming hysterically. You've heard this shrill kind of a thing, you could hardly hear the music.
My concerts didn't become a musical event, they became an event. How the media would perceive the event. It became such a hassle, and I remember that Beatles had the same problem. That's why they stopped touring. They couldn't do it anymore. And it's one of the reasons why I had to stop. I played Melbourne Cricket Grounds to 65,000 people, the Houston Astrodome to 60,000 people.
When you achieve something that big early, you can get really, you get so much. You just get so much, so many things that you overload.
I'd say halfway into the Partridge Family, you could see that the workload was just too much. And he went another 2 years after that with the Partridge Family. And unfortunately, he was burnt out at that point.
People kind of don't understand the responsibility, the incredible pressure, and the I went through such incredible identity crisis about, all of these things that you read about yourself, It's difficult to look yourself in the eye after a while, wake up in the morning and you say, well, good morning, teen idol, or whatever it is, It's difficult. It takes a tremendous toll on you, I think, emotionally.
When I announced, this is it. And I remember hearing the cynics going, oh yeah, he'll be back like David Bowie every year, he'll be back next year. He's just doing it to sell tickets. And I said, no, honestly, this is it. I can't do it anymore. I cannot continually perpetuate this thing. It's become the burden of being this famous and being this successful and having this kind of, entourage to have to go anywhere is becoming, I've lost my own identity.
This is your last tour of Britain as a pop singer. Why are you giving it up?
Well, that answer would probably take me about an hour to give you all the reasons, but the gist of it is that this is my second time here, and I played the United States 2.5 years before I ever played anywhere else, and I played some cities like 3 and 4 times, and I found that it was very anticlimactic to come back like a third or a fourth time, and to be honest with you, I've been touring about, I guess, 3.5 years, and I'm really tired. Perhaps sometime I'll come back and do it again, but it won't be as the David Cassidy as we know him today,
Cassidy hoped to leave on a high note, but in May, on his farewell tour, he performed before a crowd of 60,000 screaming schoolgirls at London's White City.
More than words can say. If I didn't care.
It was very crowded very early on, and I took one look at the crowd. It was just really pushing forward, pushing forward.
So while all this singing was going on and the band was playing and David was running around singing, I was looking down and seeing these girls being, hoisted out bodily from the front of the stage and sort of carried off.
And what makes my head go round and round while my heart stands still.
The concert was insane. There were so many, hundreds and hundreds of people being pulled out and seeing people screaming and crying because they're being crushed.
Tony Blackburn was comparing, and he went to the front of the stage. The concert stopped and said, look, it will not go on unless everybody takes 3 paces backwards.
You can't control 60,000 screaming teenagers. You can't.
More than 100 little girls lying out on stretchers backstage, and they were just coming and coming and coming, and it was a really horrible experience.
Caught in the crush, 14-year-old Bernadette Whelan from South London suffered a heart attack. She died 4 days later.
When it happened, I can't say I was numb. I wasn't numb to it. I had no idea, and incidentally, she wasn't crushed or anything. She had a heart condition. No one crushed her. She died from excitement.
It really let us know that this has to stop the way it's going now, and it was a very sobering experience.
It got to a point where I couldn't handle it anymore. I was almost numb. You'll see a guy who looks pretty numb, probably pretty scared, probably pretty frightened, very burnt out, exhausted, and confused. How did this happen? How did I get here?
I did not personally act irresponsibly, nor did the security men, nor did the ambulances and anybody else involved. I think that it just was a situation. She wasn't in the front. I don't think she was injured. She was on the sides, and I think just from the excitement of it all, so I've been told, and there have been a lot of rumors about it, she just had, I think, a heart attack.
Despite the White City tragedy, Cassidy's final performance went ahead in Manchester. For security reasons, he arrived disguised as a St. John's ambulance man. But many parents kept their daughters away. Although only 24, it was David's last concert for a decade.
It was very emotional for me. I remember when I was running off to get into the helicopter, running across the field. I remember thinking, this is it. I'll never do this again. I felt this weight as I was running off the field. I felt myself getting lighter and lighter and lighter.
David was completely exhausted and lost. Just wanted to, go home and lock the door. The audience, again, and the frenzy involved with a young pop star is short term. If you're going to go long term, you've got to find something else to tap into in the audience besides how cute you look on a poster.
Walking down the street, the neighbors started booing me. Booing me? Do you know what that does for my ego? Your ego could use a little booing.
The Partridge Family lasted, I believe, 4.5 years. I think we did 96 episodes. I don't think David could go on. Not only could he not keep up the hours, but he couldn't keep up the pretense of being Keith Partridge and didn't want to.
The ratings went down. Our time slot was a suicide time slot in the last year. They put us against All in the Family, which was a huge, huge hit in those days.
Mom, is there something you wanted to talk to me about?
No.
Susan Day went on to star in LA Law.
Susan Day, to everyone's surprise, for 15 years went on to have the career of the Partridge Family. It was Susan Day's career. She had a huge hit with LA Law, and then she and before that she'd done some movies. I remember I was 16, 15. Went and saw her first movie, and she took her clothes off. I went, Jesus Christ, glory.
I knew it. You've heard the rumors. I take it you don't believe in those rumors.
while Shirley Jones returned to her first love, stage musicals.
Then I think we should relax for 6 months and use that time to take a hard look at what we're doing.
New York's new Big 105.
After overcoming drug addiction, Danny Bonaducci became a stand-up comedian and radio DJ.
Chevy Chase, how you doing, man?
Hey, you're going on vacation.
I am out the door in just a couple of hours, and you're filling in for me starting Monday morning. I used to say that you know your career is over when you do the Love Boat, and I did it twice. And then it dropped me off at Fantasy Island, and then boom, I was done.
Why me?
I thought it was going to be a lot greater than it was. You know, I thought, boy, wouldn't it be great for everybody to know who you are? And I decided very quickly, no, that's not great at all. Fame is a prison. It's a prison that the more famous you are, the smaller your world becomes. And that's not any fun.
It's a tricky situation.
Having abandoned live performance, David Cassidy concentrated on recording, hoping to woo a more mature audience.
Save your soul. Just love shadows till the rivers run cold. But hey, babe, get it up for love.
And then you came back, and the publicity blurb said things like, I've got some here from June 1975, last year. David Cassidy left his teen idol image behind in February. Well, have you changed at all? That's really what I'm asking.
Well, I'm making the kind of records, I'm writing the kind of songs. See, I was never able to do that. I was never able to reveal David Cassidy. I was never able to sit down and tell you exactly who and what I feel about something. That was never ever done or ever accomplished. They kept me from doing that. I was never able to write and record the kind of songs I wanted to do. And as an artist, I just felt very, 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 very sort of confined.
After the international touring was over, he kind of got into recording. You know, he made several albums. First one was The Harder They Climb. And for that, on the cover, we had him sort of reaching up, you know, holding onto like a rope with his guitar. And on the back was going to be the picture, The Harder They Fall. And so we did this shot in an alley, and him as a drunken bum, being the actor that he was able to really make this look real. The record company was horrified, you know, because it looked so real. They wouldn't let us use it. We had to shoot the suit that he wore on the front. We had to shoot that laying on the ground with lots of girls' feet standing around as if he'd fallen.
Shortly after that, about a year or so after that, my father died. And I call this time really the dark period of my life. I began drinking.
David had, you know, the challenge of not speaking to him in the last year or two, and that's a rough one for him, and I know that.
We didn't talk for the last 9 months of his life. The more famous I became, the more my father resented me. And all I really wanted him to do was put his arms around me and tell me he loved me. And the more I did to make him proud of me, the more it alienated him from me.
There was a certain tragedy that really went along with the competition between him and his father. So I think that had a lot to do with his drinking and, you know, where he went from there. And then when you realized that he wasn't, the show was over and he wasn't really making records and he kind of disappeared, and you knew there was something wrong. You know, same with me. When I kind of like disappeared for a while, everybody knew that I was either going to come back healthy or I wasn't going to come back. You know, and that's really what the two choices you have. Either you have a choice to live or die. You know, and I think both of us made choices to live. A lot of our friends didn't.
He had been idolized, you know, around the world. And I mean, just the king, you know, and now he'd kind of reached the sort of a fallow period, you know, where there wasn't that much happening.
When he beat his addiction, frustrated by the music industry, David revived his acting career.
He went back to his first love, which was acting, you know. I mean, after all, he didn't start out to be a singer. He started out purely as an actor.
You all want to borrow how much?
I told you we want to borrow $25,000. Could win a lot of money. We'll pay it back. Probably pay it all back inside a year.
I say no. That's what.
Now, I sure am sorry to hear you say that, Uncle George.
don't really matter much now, does it?
Is there any difference in the kind of emotional reaction you get now from the kind of reaction you used to get in the 60s, 70s?
60s.
Late 60s.
How am I ever going to live this down?
He sold over 20 million albums in the 70s. Now reconciled to life as a former teen idol, in 1985 he made a brief pop comeback with The Last Kiss and Romance.
She danced into my life one night. Romance.
It all ended when he married Kay Lenz. It was a bit difficult, that one was. I went into a deep depression over that. And I think that was sort of the end in any case for David Cassidy in that teenage era. And it was the end for all of us. But, you know, once your heart's gone out to an idol like David Cassidy, you never quite lose it.
Despite the millions of marriage proposals he'd received from fans, in reality, lasting romance was a stranger to David. His first 2 marriages ended in divorce. He only found happiness when he met his third wife, Sue Schifrin.
Certainly my wife has made an enormous difference in my life. My son. I heal every day of my life with my son. All of my own relationship with my father. Everything, you know, my wife and friends of ours said, you know, have said to me, you really are a great father. And I learned how to be a great father by having my father, because everything he didn't do, I do. Every time I make a promise to him, I keep it.
In the early 90s, in Blood Brothers on Broadway, where his father had once starred, David Cassidy again stepped back into the limelight.
I think Blood Brothers for him was a very, very important thing. More for him career-wise, more for me personally.
Try to remember jokes I knew.
David wanted to be a straight actor. I mean, he didn't want to become a pop star. Although it brought him great fame and wealth, he almost resents it, because you know, the pop stardom stopped him from doing what he really wanted to do.
It is the most significant piece of work I have ever done, for me in many respects. It was an opportunity for me to come back. I'd never worked with my brother. I had to twist his arm to do it.
And it took him on a path that has taken him where he is now. And the show he's doing now is nothing like Blood Brothers, but still, it is a major deal up there, and it's a big success, and he's a grown-up.
The fact that David Cassidy became the biggest star in the world is an amazing thing. The fact that after it went away, he ended up on Broadway and winning an award and packing houses, doing it twice is amazing. And now he's the biggest draw in what could be considered, in a certain way, the show business capital of the world. The guy is phenomenally successful for the 3rd time.
Step right up, come on in. There's a show that's about to begin.
I've been through a tremendous journey, a learning experience, but I think the reason that I'm as successful as I am today is because the audience has connected with what I do.
Ladies and gentlemen, the star of effects, David Cassidy.
People now make the comparison to Sinatra because it was his town and it was Elvis's town, and a lot of the media said to me, so you're the guy now. Yeah, Elvis, Sammy, Dean, Frank, now me.